The average American has $63,000 saved for retirement. The median Social Security check is about $2,000 a month. And according to the Federal Reserve, half of people approaching retirement have less than $365,000 in total net worth, including their house. Now, here's the thing that makes this interesting. When you survey retirees about their financial satisfaction, you find people living comfortably on what financial advisors would call catastrophically low savings levels. Meanwhile, I know guys making $300,000 a year who are paralyzed with retirement anxiety despite having over $2 million saved. So either half the country is delusional about their financial security, or we're all being sold a retirement model that fundamentally misunderstands how money actually works in old age. And I think it's the second one. I'm going to walk you through what retirees actually have, what they actually spend, and why the gap between financial advice and financial reality is so massive that it's creating two parallel economies of retirement. One that exists in spreadsheets and one that exists in real life. And once you see how the incentives work, you'll understand why nobody wants to tell you the truth about this. Before I get into it, I built something that might help you see through the noise. It's a retirement calculator based on the institutional formulas that Vanguard and BlackRock actually use, not the garbage-free tools online that ignore taxes and inflation consistency. It accounts for what I call the 4 horsemen of wealth erosion. Hundreds of people have used it already. It's free, but I'll ask for your email so you can get your report without me storing your financial data. So let me start with the model everyone sells you. Retirement planning is supposed to be a 3-legged stool. Social Security is leg 1. Your pension is leg 2. Your personal savings is leg 3. The metaphor makes sense if you're picturing something from 1955. But here's what actually happened. Pensions mostly died. Only 14% of private sector workers have access to one anymore. Social Security is still there, but everyone's convinced it's going bankrupt, so nobody trusts it. Which means the entire weight of retirement has shifted onto leg 3, your personal savings, which was never designed to hold that much load. So now, financial advisors tell you that you need to save 7 to 13 times your annual income by age 65. T. Rowe Price publishes these charts, Goldman Sachs publishes these charts, and then you look at the actual data and realize that almost half of Americans, 49.5%, have literally $0 saved in retirement accounts. Another 20% have less than $50,000. That's 70% of the country with under $50,000 in retirement savings. And yet, somehow, the system hasn't collapsed. Here's where it gets really interesting. The Census Bureau says the average retirement income in the United States is about $60,000 a year. The median is $48,000. Those are not huge numbers, but they're also not destitution. And when you look at satisfaction surveys, retirees consistently report being okay. Not thriving, but okay. Which creates this massive cognitive dissonance because if you listen to financial media, anyone retiring on less than $1 million is walking into a nightmare. So what's going on? Let me tell you a story about 2 brothers. Not mine. I just know the family through business connections. Brother 1 worked in tech sales, made about $120,000 a year during his peak earning years. He saved aggressively, maxed out his 401k, put another chunk into a taxable brokerage account. By 65, he had about $1.2 million saved. He retired, felt pretty good about it. Brother 2 worked in municipal government, made about $70,000 a year. He contributed to his 401k, but not aggressively. By 65, he had maybe $200,000 saved. Financial advisors would look at Brother 2 and panic. But here's what actually happened. Brother 2 had a pension. Not a huge one, but it paid him about $30,000 a year. His Social Security was about $24,000 because he had consistent earnings history. His wife also got Social Security, another $18,000. So before they touched their $200,000 in savings, they had $72,000 a year in guaranteed income. Brother 1, the saver, had no pension. His Social Security was a bit higher, maybe $28,000, because he earned more. But he was pulling from his $1.2 million in savings to make up the difference. And here's the kicker. After 5 years of retirement, guess who was less stressed about money? Brother 2, because his baseline was covered by guaranteed income. Brother 1 was watching his account balance, doing mental math on sequence of returns risk, worried about every market dip. Same family, wildly different psychology. And the difference wasn't the savings number, it was the structure. This brings me to the first big reveal. The retirement industry has an incentive problem. Financial advisors get paid as a percentage of assets under management. If you have $1 million invested with them, they make about $10,000 a year. If you have $200,000, they make $2,000. Which model do you think they're going to recommend? The one that requires you to save $1 million. Now, to be fair, I'm not saying advisors are lying. Most of them genuinely believe the models they're selling. But those models were built during a period when pensions were disappearing and the industry needed individuals to replace that lost income with personal assets. More assets under management, more fees, bigger industry. It's not a conspiracy. It's just incentives doing what incentives do. And the psychological effect on savers is brutal because it turns retirement into an arms race. You start thinking you need $1 million. Then someone tells you it's actually $2 million when you account for inflation. Then someone else says it's $3 million if you want to travel. And the finish line keeps moving because the advice is based on a model that assumes your savings have to replace everything. But here's the reality. Social Security is actually pretty good at replacing baseline income for people who didn't make a fortune. The average benefit is about $1,976 a month. For a couple, that's close to $4,000. If your pre-retirement spending was $60,000 a year, Social Security alone is covering almost 80% of it, which means your savings only need to fill a much smaller gap. Now you might be thinking, okay, but Social Security is going broke. I hear this all the time. And the truth is more complicated than either side admits. Yes, the trust fund will be depleted by around 2033 or 2034, but that doesn't mean benefits go to zero. It means benefits get cut to whatever the payroll tax can cover, which is estimated at about 77% of currently promised benefits. Not great, but also not zero. And politically, it's almost impossible to imagine Congress allowing a 23% cut to hit without some kind of patch. They'll probably raise the payroll tax cap, or adjust the retirement age again, or means test benefits for high earners. I'm not saying it's a perfect system. I'm saying the catastrophic scenario everyone fears is the least likely outcome because old people vote and they vote in huge numbers. The incentive structure in politics makes it nearly impossible to destroy Social Security. It's the third rail. Touch it and you die. So when financial advisors tell you to ignore Social Security in your planning, they're telling you to plan for the least likely scenario, which happens to be the scenario where you need to save the most money with them. Here's the second big reveal. The entire model of retirement spending is based on a rule that turns out to be wrong. The rule is that you'll spend 80% of your pre-retirement income once you retire. It's repeated everywhere. Fidelity says it, Vanguard says it, and when you actually survey retirees and ask them what they spend, you find massive variation. Some people spend 50% of what they used to make. Some spend 80%. And the wild part is that life satisfaction barely changes across that range. There was a study, I think it was by Goldman Sachs, showing that retirees spending 50 to 60% of their pre-retirement income reported being just as satisfied as retirees spending 70 to 80%, which suggests that the spending number is not some fixed biological need. It's a choice. And that choice is way more flexible than anyone admits. But if you're a financial product company, you can't sell flexibility. You can't build a calculator around the idea that maybe you'll just spend less. So they lock in the 80% rule, which maximizes the savings target, which maximizes the assets you need to bring to the table, which maximizes the fees they collect. Again, not a conspiracy, just incentives. Let me tell you another story. A guy I know used to run a small construction business, sold it in his early 60s. He walked away with about $400,000 after taxes and paying off debts. Not rich, solidly middle class. He and his wife owned their house outright, no mortgage. Their Social Security combined was about $42,000 a year. He figured he needed another $20,000 a year from savings to live the way he wanted. $20,000 a year on $400,000 is a 5% withdrawal rate, which is higher than the traditional 4% rule. But he was okay with it because he wasn't planning to leave a huge inheritance. He just wanted the money to last until he and his wife were gone. 10 years later, he's fine. Actually, he's more than fine because his spending went down naturally as he aged. He's not traveling as much, he's not buying new tools, his hobbies got cheaper, and his account balance barely moved because the market went up during most of that period. He got lucky on sequence of returns. But even if he hadn't, his baseline was covered by Social Security, so the worst case was just spending less on discretionary stuff. Compare that to the anxiety he would have felt if some advisor had told him he needed $1 million. He would have worked another 5 years, missed time with his grandkids, and ended up with way more money than he actually needed. The psychological cost of oversaving is real, and nobody talks about it. This brings me to the third reveal, and this one is about the math everyone gets wrong. The 4% rule says you can safely withdraw 4% of your portfolio in year one of retirement, adjust for inflation each year, and your money should last 30 years. It's based on historical data. It's a decent guideline. But here's what it misses. It assumes you're going to stick to that withdrawal schedule no matter what. In reality, retirees are way more flexible. If the market crashes, they cut spending. If the market booms, they spend a bit more. This flexibility dramatically reduces the risk of running out of money. But it's not built into the models because it's hard to quantify. The models have to assume you're a robot who withdraws exactly 4% adjusted for inflation every year, even during a depression. Real humans don't behave that way. Real humans look at their account balance and adjust, which means the safe withdrawal rate is probably higher than 4% for most people. But the industry can't tell you that because if they're wrong and you run out of money, you sue them. So they build in conservatism, which is fine, except it makes people think they need way more savings than they actually do. And that conservatism has a cost. It keeps people working longer than they need to. It creates retirement anxiety that's not based on reality. It's based on models designed to protect institutions from liability, not to reflect how retirement actually works. Let me give you a concrete example with real numbers. Let's say you're 65. You and your spouse have a combined Social Security benefit of $45,000 a year. You own your home, no mortgage. You have $300,000 saved in a 401k. You want to spend $70,000 a year. Social Security covers $45,000, so you need $25,000 a year from savings. If you use a 4% withdrawal rate, $300,000 generates $12,000 a year. You're short $13,000. According to the traditional model, you can't retire. You need at least $625,000 saved to generate that extra $25,000 at 4%. But let's think about this differently. What if you just withdraw the $25,000 you need? That's an 8.3% withdrawal rate in year one. Sounds insane, right? Except remember, you're only bridging the gap until you can tap other resources or adjust spending, and your baseline is covered by Social Security. If your $300,000 runs out in 15 years, you're 79 years old, and you still have $45,000 a year from Social Security. You just have to live on that. Is it ideal? No. But is it catastrophic? Also no, especially if you're willing to make small adjustments along the way. Maybe you drop your discretionary spending from $25,000 to $20,000. Now your money lasts 19 years instead of 15. Maybe you downsize your house at 75 and bank another 100,000. Now you're fine until 90. The point is, the rigidity of the model doesn't reflect the flexibility of real life. And that gap is where all the anxiety lives. Here's the fourth reveal, and this is the one that ties it all together. The real retirement crisis is not that people don't have enough money. It's that people don't understand how much is enough, and that ignorance is profitable for an entire industry. If you're scared you don't have enough, you save more, you invest more, you pay more fees, you consume more financial content, you buy more products. The fear is the product. And the way you kill the fear is not by saving more money. It's by understanding your actual numbers. What is your Social Security benefit going to be? You can check that right now on the Social Security website. What are your fixed expenses in retirement going to be? Probably lower than you think if your mortgage is paid off. What is your discretionary spending floor? The minimum you'd be okay living on if things went bad? Once you have those numbers, you can do actual math instead of vibing off rules of thumb designed to maximize asset accumulation. And when you do that math, you'll probably find that you need less than you think. Not zero, but less. I want to come back to that statistic I opened with. Half of Americans have less than $365,000 in total net worth at retirement age. And yet, the system has not collapsed. Retirees are not starving in the streets. Life satisfaction among retirees is actually pretty stable. How is that possible if everyone is undersaved? The answer is that Social Security is doing way more heavy lifting than anyone admits, and people are more adaptable than the models assume. They spend less. They work part-time longer. They move in with family. They tap home equity. They make it work. Is it ideal? No. Should people save more? Yes, if they can. But the gap between the advice and the reality reveals something important about who benefits from the fear. It's not you. Now, here's what you actually do with this information. First, go to the Social Security website and check your benefit estimate. Do it today. That number is your retirement floor. Everything else is a question of lifestyle. Second, calculate your actual fixed expenses in retirement. Not a percentage of your current income, your actual expenses. Mortgage, property tax, insurance, utilities, food, healthcare. Add it up. If that number is less than your Social Security benefit, congratulations, your baseline is covered. Everything you've saved is for discretionary spending and cushion. Third, stop optimizing for the worst case scenario. The worst case is you adjust your lifestyle. That's not comfortable, but it's also not the end of the world. Financial advisors won't tell you this because their job is to protect you from ever having to make that adjustment. But the cost of that protection is working longer than you might need to, and time is the one thing you can't get back. Look, I've been running my own business for over a decade. I've sat in rooms with accountants and fiscal lawyers who manage generational wealth. And the thing I've learned is that rich people don't optimize for maximum savings. They optimize for maximum flexibility. They want options. They want the ability to move money around, to take advantage of opportunities, to adjust when things change. The middle class is sold the opposite model. Save as much as possible, lock it away in tax-deferred accounts, don't touch it until you're 70, follow the 4% rule, hope it works out. That model works for the institutions managing the money. It doesn't necessarily work for you. I'm not saying don't save. I'm saying understand what you're saving for, and don't let fear of an unlikely scenario steal years of your life. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most financial mistakes are not math problems. They're brain problems. We don't understand how our own decision-making works under uncertainty. So we outsource it to models that feel scientific, but are really just guesses wrapped in decimal points. The guy with $300,000 who retires comfortably because he understands his expenses and his income floor is making a better decision than the guy with $2 million who's paralyzed by fear of sequence of returns risk. The difference is not the money, it's the psychology. And that's where the real alpha is. Lazy investing built more fortune than crypto memes. The people who got rich didn't panic. They didn't over-optimize. They didn't let fear of an unlikely scenario dictate their entire life strategy. They understood their numbers, made a plan, and executed. You can do the same. Check your Social Security benefit. Calculate your real expenses. Stop letting other people's incentives dictate your retirement timeline. The data is right there. You just have to look at it.